Hey guys, Brannan Lawson with the Art Barn Studio. Today's sculpture, we are making a three-dimensional pencil. So this is what you will need. You will need a paper towel roll. That is what is our armature under here. I also use plastic grocery bags. I use scissors and masking tape. If you don't have plastic grocery bags, another thing you can use is some kind of newspaper, old magazine, or actually the paper towels, anything that can be used to help stuff inside the paper towel just to make it a little bit stronger. The next important thing you need is rigid wrap. Rigid wrap is what is going over the armature to help make it the hard. Rigid wrap is just like the plaster that you use on cast. So this is just from Amazon. Depending on how many people you need. I think my pencil only did 4 long strips. I cut them into long strips like this. They do come in a roll. So I cut them into 4. I did use 4, actually 4.5. So one was cut in half to cover the smaller parts. But rigid wrap, it is a great addition to any art room or any homeschool room to create different sculptures. But again, get your supplies, get ready, and then we're going to be creating and painting our own three-dimensional pencil. Okay, I'm going to walk you through taking a paper towel roll and creating your own three-dimensional pencil sculpture. So here's what you need. Obviously a paper towel roll, not a toilet paper, paper towel. Scissors, masking tape. What I don't have pictured is grocery bags or something you can stuff your paper towel roll. You could use paper towels, grocery bags, newspaper, anything that will make it more stable. And this is the key right here is your rigid wrap. This is from Amazon, but it is plaster cloth and it comes in rolls like this. And I just take it and cut it into long strips. This will be the messy part. So when we get to this part, you will need to make sure that you are outdoors doing this and you have everything covered. If you're like on a back porch, because it still gets messy and no nice clothes. And I just cut that with scissors. So we're going to take, and then the colors we're using are a deep yellow, a light pink, a Payne's gray, and a burnt umber, and then white, because I take the white and I lighten up the Payne's gray to make a gray, and then the burnt umber to make the brown. So add white into that. So let's get this moved off because we're not there yet. So I can find a marker and I'll mark so you can see what I'm doing. So and I just really played this by ear. I started with 3 slits and realized it wasn't not going to work. So I just marked them. I'm just going to cut them. Now this is the tip. So what you have to do, and you're going to get your masking tape ready as piece, because once you get it there, then you're going to have to tape it off. So go ahead and get this out and ready to tape it off when you get to that point. Okay, so what we're creating is an armature. An armature is just the kind of bones of your sculpture. So once you've cut your slits, you're going to make sure that you bend them, and this is where, I mean, you're going to have to just work at it, but you want it to be a point. And as you can see, they're kind of just overlapping each other. And then once I kind of got it to a point, I know it's not perfect. Then I'm going to wrap my tape around it. use masking tape. So if you want to, you should be using scissors. You should be able to rip it. So when you pull a piece off, you take your finger and your thumb and your finger and your thumb. So your finger and thumb are on one end, close to the tape. Your other finger and thumb are on the other end. The one that's holding the tape, I'm going to pull towards me. The other one, I'm going to push the other way. So I get them close, and then again, towards me, away from me. And then it rips it off. For some reason, I know it's hard to understand how to rip masking tape. And yes, sometimes it gets to a point where you just have to cut it. Okay, so you can see I've kind of made sure all those holes are covered in masking tape. The next thing we're going to do, again, I didn't have whatever you want to stuff this with. Grocery bags. We always have tons of grocery bags on hand. Again, paper towels work. This is just going to help make the toilet paper a little more make it sturdier, because obviously the plaster, we have to add water, and if you're adding water to the plaster, then it's going to possibly, if you add too many pieces of plaster, make this, because this is paper, fall apart. So stuff it till you can't stuff it anymore. And I do want it going to the very top. I think I used like 6 bags, and I mean, I pushed hard. You can feel it, it's much sturdier. But I do want 1 bag coming here, because now we're going to tape this off to make the pencil part flat on your armature. So again, all we're going to do is take it and lay it right over. Okay. So we have our armature for our pencil. Again, masking tape, paper towel roll, and I stuffed it with plastic bags. So once we've got that, we're moving on. Put these 2 items away. Make sure you've already cut your plaster up. We're moving on to adding the plaster. Again, this is when it gets messy. Now, as you get the plaster on, it's important that I did the long strips because I knew I was doing a pencil. It worked better that way. Instead of going around this way, it would take a little bit more time. So when I lay them, I'm laying them like this, and then we'll get them on there. So I'm going to get a little thing of water. I think I'm going to put a plastic bag over my workspace. So there is a technique. Again, this is paper. Water and paper do not work together well. So as you dip your plaster in, you got to take your scissor fingers, go down and kind of wring out the extra water off of the plaster. This is where it kind of gets messy, because if you don't, again, that water starts soaking into the paper and and your armature can fall apart. But that's why hopefully stuffing it with our plastic bags helped. And you can see I'm just smoothing it out. I'm not adding any more water. I'm just using what water is on there and smoothing it out. I'm going to continue to do this until my whole armature is covered. Okay, so I've covered most of my pencil. Now, the only thing is the end. So you can take a piece, if you don't want to use a big piece, and just cut it so don't waste anything. But do make sure you cover the top, and then check the point of your pencil. Make sure that is all covered. You may have to do it the same thing to the point, which I did pretty good, getting them all overlapped. And then I'm just smoothing out. And you're going to notice it dries pretty quickly. So I'm going to leave this sitting on something plastic where it's not going to stick. Again, I need to clean up my space, but this needs to dry. I usually let it dry for a complete 24 hours before adding any paint to it. So let it dry, and we'll come back created with our paper towel roll, and we're going to turn it into a pencil. So this is what you're going to need. First of all, I'm going to get a plastic paper bag to rest it on, because as you paint it, I tried paper towels and it stuck to it. So I want something plastic it's not going to stick to as I paint it, because if I lay it down, it's going to get my table messy. Small styrofoam plate, again, not paper, because paper will soak in your paint. I have my big brush. I need some water, a paper towel to dab it off on, and obviously paint colors. So my paint colors I'm using, I have a light pink. I'm using a Payne's gray, which is a dark gray with white, and then a deep yellow, a burnt umber, which I'm adding white to, and then the Payne's gray without adding white is on the tip. So those are the colors I'm using. Again, pink, gray, yellow, brown, and black. So I have this here so we can see. And then the black marks, that's what we used with permanent marker. That will be at the very end. So go ahead and squirt my paint. I don't need that much pink. I do need more deep yellow than anything else. And then I'm going to put my gray and burnt umber or Payne's gray on one side. I don't need a lot of those. And then white in the middle of those two, because again, I'm going to be mixing in some white to lighten it up. If I put them too far on my canvas, then it's harder to mix up. Again, make sure you have something that's going to cover your workspace so you can leave your armature and paint it. So we're going to start with our deep yellow. Now, I'm not going to bring it all the way to the top. I am going to stop. I'm not drawing any lines on my armature because I kind of can just figure it out. But if you wanted to draw a pencil line to know where to stop, obviously I'm going to bring it down right to before the heads into the point. So, and because the armature, it does have like, it's not completely smooth. You kind of have to push the paint down into it. And I like adding a little water to my brush just to get it a little bit thinner paint, and it kind of goes into those creases. I don't want a lot, because if you add too much, it'll lighten up the color. But again, I'm not going all the way to the top. I'm kind of just stopping, because I can paint gray over the yellow and it won't show through if I go too far to the top. But you do kind of have to go, see those little spots, I kind of have to go back and forth and work it in to the armature. Far into the pointed part, the light brown will cover it up. I'd rather have the yellow right next to the brown than have a white space. Okay, I'm just checking to make sure all my white spots are filled in. Again, this is acrylic paint that we're using because it'll stay, and if it does stain, so make sure that you are covering. Okay, so I'm going to gently and quietly bounce it on the bottom of my water cup, dab it on my paper towel. I don't want any water on my brush. Now you have an option. You can, let this dry a bit, and I kind of had to lean it against something like this so it wouldn't touch. But because it's plastic, I think I'm going to be okay. That's when I was using paper towel. The paper towel stuck to it, so I don't want to use that. So I'm going to lean it against my other pencil. A blow dryer would be great. You could, go sit this outside and let it air dry, or, hit it with the blow dryer to get this layer dry. We really don't have to wait that long because the pink is going to be next, and we're going to have a space between the yellow and the pink where the gray goes. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the pink. Again, I want to bring the pink as close to the yellow without still leaving a space, because again, I'd rather the gray be painted over those two spots than you can see a space in there. Okay, so I'm done with my pink. Gently bounce it off. I did not get it that clean. I kept seeing yellow pop up in my pink, but I was able to cover it up. So I want to clean it a little bit better this time. Dab it on my paper towel. Make sure all the water and paint are off. So these two colors are going to dry. I'm going to go ahead and move to the points. Again, you're going to get a little messy. The brown. And if you ever look at a pencil, the yellow is kind of a zigzag because the shape of the pencil is not completely round. It has these flat edges that create these circular shapes. So that way it doesn't roll off the table. So as you sharpen those kind of turn into more of a zigzag. So I'm not really particular on how I'm adding the brown. As long as it's covering the yellow, I'm just kind of pushing my brush up and down to give it that kind of uneven look on there. So make sure it's clean. This is where you're going to mix your two colors. That's why I have the white in the middle. So I just need a little of the burnt umber with the white to make it. I want a lighter brown. Here we go. And again, mine's not completely dry. So, and I'm going all the way to the tip because that Payne's Gray will cover up. Okay, last but not least is the gray. Again, you're going in between that. I'm not worried about if it's perfect lines, straight lines. I'm just trying to cover up that white space, making sure I go over a little of the yellow, over a little of the pink. So the Payne's Gray, you're going to move over some white, a little bit of that. It really does not take much to make. And don't use it all. You need some of the Payne's Gray because that's going to be the tip, the lead of your... And then the Payne's Gray, which is just the darker color, that's what I'm going to use to paint the tip. I know I have a big brush. Looks pretty good. I'm going to carefully bounce it off the bottom. Dab it on the paper towel. Now my only thing is I can see where I used too much water in my yellow as I was painting with it. So because I'm done holding it, I'm just going to go over that a little bit to make it a little bit less see-through, making sure I don't miss any spots. Okay, so this whole thing is pretty wet. So I do want to like carefully lay it on the plastic. So I'm going to get my brush, paper plate. I'm all done with this. So I'm going to go ahead and trash that. Again, making my area a little bit neater. So I'm going to take my plastic bag, fold it because that's where the wet paint is. Carefully lay my brush, paintbrush, pencil down. Again, clean up my area. Once your pencil has completely dried, the last step is some details, which you can just do with a Sharpie marker. Again, make sure that your paint is completely dry because it will not work on wet paint. If you didn't paint your tip with the Payne's Gray already, you could always do that with your Sharpie. The only other thing I'm going to do is add the details on the, what would be the metal part. And you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. I'm just going to follow as best as I can the lines separating the pink and the gray. So I'm going to go right. Ooh, my 2 is a little crazy. I mean, you're welcome to add more detail. You could always draw how pencils are technically not round, but they have flat edges so they don't roll off a table. You could always draw those lines within your pencil. But I think I'm going to stop right there. So I hope you enjoyed creating your 3-dimensional number 2 pencil with me. I hope you enjoyed making your 3-dimensional pencil with me. I hope you learned a lot about sculpture and creating an armature, and these little techniques of masking tape and some kind of paper towel roll or other cardboard is a great way to kind of play with it and learn how to make other armatures. Even adding different paints can change what this turns into. It doesn't have to be a pencil. It could be a colored pencil. You could make it into anything that has that shape. And again, toilet paper rolls, paper towel rolls, these are all great things to keep on hand with your rigid wrap so you can create a bunch of different sculptures. So thanks for joining me.